Hi, this is Lewis Perkins with the Apparel Impact Institute, and we are back again this week for another episode of our climate conversations, focusing in on AII's work to build a climate solutions portfolio of proven solutions to decarbonize the apparel supply chain. And with that today, I'm joined by Steffen Müller from GIZ, who is one of the grantee programs, partnership programs that we're working on. Welcome, Steffen. Nice to see you.
Hello, nice to see you. Thanks for the invitation.
And also Mallory McConnell, who's joining us from PVH, but also as a lead partner to the Fashion Climate Fund, which helps support the grant making that we do to the Climate Solutions portfolio, as well as a member of the Expert Advisory Council that is reviewing and helping provide critical input in the process of reviewing the grants. So thank you, Mallory.
Hey, thanks, Liz. Excited to be here.
And Pauline, you've seen on previous podcasts, and she is a member of our team at AII and helping our team drive the review of the Climate Solutions portfolio applications and lead our organization's review of those against a very specific criteria. And she'll talk a little bit more about that in relationship to this project with GIZ.
Hello.
So let's just go ahead and dive in. And I think for those who are joining us for this podcast, also feel free to go back and listen to the ones that we've released before. Each one is kind of building on the case that AII is playing this role with the industry and with technical expertise and other partners and programs out there as a center of gravity for all of us that are working on proven solutions that we need to get to scale to decarbonize the textile apparel and footwear sector. And I say that because, the invitation for more to join in this work is always there. Our intent is to find the best-in-class programs, initiatives, and solutions and really bring them forward as a collective portfolio of solutions so that suppliers by product type, by region, by size, will have different options available to them as they're on their own decarbonization journey. With that, I'm really excited about this particular innovation because it focuses on a particular region or country. It also focuses on a particular intervention or lever that we identified in the carbon roadmap to net zero that we wrote with World Resource Institute. And there's a lot of other ways that it really meets what we're looking for. And with that, I'm just going to ask Steffen to share a little bit more for our audience so that I don't do it. Tell me about this project and tell me about what you will be doing in partnership with AII at GIZ.
We will offer early stage project development for renewable energy projects. So that means we will go to textile factories and we will screen for renewable energy cases. And together with the factory management, we will develop concrete renewable projects. So we will analyze their cases on a technical level, on an economic level, and also from the regulatory framework perspective, we will check what is possible in Bangladesh. So this will have a capacity development effect on the factory management, but we will also have a very concrete proposal for the specific factory, taking into account their financial situation and taking into account their technical possibilities on site. And once this project is developed, we will work with the management in order to get it realized. We have a large network of technology suppliers and also of suppliers of financial solutions. So if this is required, we can also bring in financial solutions like leasing agreements. And we will then support the deal closing because as we experienced in other projects, there are normally many questions before the deal can be signed, and we support then both sides, the factory management and the technology supplier.
It also addresses one of the key levers, which is renewable energy. And we know that, our goal is that we find best-in-class programs and solutions for each one of these categories that's written out in the carbon roadmap. And obviously, renewable energy, electricity is vital, that so many industries are approaching. So I have two questions. One is, have you all been doing this work before? Do you have a proof of concept that you've already rolled out in terms of your role within this, that this helps now expand into a new region? Tell us what's different about this or how it builds upon expertise.
Yes, we have experience. We have experience in over 20 countries. So we are mainly active in Africa, and we are active in some countries in Asia. So we have really a standard process to go to a factory to analyze the case and the situation. And out of our experience, I think this is always great news that we can identify business cases for the renewable solution. So the factory will even save money with the renewable solutions and not only contribute to climate protection, but also save energy costs. And I think this is always a great news. We can really spread and convince factories to invest in renewables and to go for energy switch there.
Yeah, which is also great because the payback on this has a life cycle that really rewards the facility faster. And I think that's always attractive whenever we're going to have a short payback and then continued compounded benefits as a result. I mean, that's always a win over the things that have a long investment cycle, right? I think what appealed to me about it, and I would love to pull Mallory into this a little bit too, to get her thoughts, is when I, came into this work with AII, one of the first things that I heard from the big brands is we do not have enough technical expertise out there in globally. Like even if you raised all the money in the world to subsidize technical assessment and to deliver, tailored programming for these facilities to decarbonize, lower their water, chemical management, we just need to build capacity on technical expertise. And so to me, this sounds like you're technical experts running these programs in 20 other countries, and now you're going to bring that expertise into a new region. To me, that's like exactly one of the issues we were talking about 5 years ago. Mallory, is that accurate? Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about reach, right? And so, I think when we look at kind of the levers and even within sort of a PVH supply chain, renewable energy is a good 10 to 12% of kind of our opportunity when we think about kind of our decarbonization strategy. So a ton of work that needs to happen here, right? But I think context of each country is different. It's a pretty complicated thing to start to address when you think about infrastructure policy, even just availability of some of that infrastructure and technology. So I think, this project stood out to us to like a really, really good opportunity to bring some of that into a really key region for production and start to, and really I would say an underdeveloped region in terms of kind of renewable energy and infrastructure that supports that. So I think it's going to be a really big game changer in terms of, setting a landscape and understanding what's possible in a really important manufacturing region for the supply chain.
Yeah, and that's a great point you just made, which is anybody working in the sector knows the importance of Bangladesh. But for those outside of it, I mean, it is one of the top countries for producing apparel, not just PVH, but all the big brand retailers are really in Bangladesh. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. And I would say one of potentially the more complex regions when you think about energy, right? And so, I think we have conversations around grid reliability. You have facilities that are using generators to kind of make up for challenges around grid reliability. And so, I think thinking about what is a potential solve for on-site renewables is going to be a big game changer in this region specifically.
Stabilizing energy, access to energy is complicated for Bangladesh. And as I also understand, the even just looking at what solutions would be provided versus solar arrays on lands that may not be available. So rooftop and just looking at what is the right answer for this region, as opposed to where you may have a place where you can apply renewable electricity in a different way. Is there anything else as you're sort of thinking about the criteria? And I'm getting into the Pauline area too, which is as you were sitting on the expert advisory council for the climate solutions portfolio with other technical experts, suppliers, and brands, you all were being asked to look at the effectiveness, the reach, and the scale of this project. And how do you see, and you kind of touched on it, but how do you see those three areas being reached?
Yeah, and would look also to Pauline for her input because she's very much involved in these conversations. But again, I think when we look at effectiveness, it's just a question of like, do you have the data that kind of is evidence of driving the impact that we need to see, right? So, again, I think GIZ has such a rich experience in doing this work. It has kind of evidence to show of success. So that's a one indicator, right? I think when in climate, I'm sorry, Louis, you can speak to this probably more than I can, but I think we're really focused on not necessarily entirely in the kind of pre-seed conceptual ideation phase of the grant making process, but really thinking about, how do we get things to commercial scale with that's available and affordable for the supply chain. So I think, having kind of that evidence that's based on actual implementation was really important. Again, I think I talked about the reach of moving into a region where this is not really available right now. It's kind of underdeveloped and really right that I think needed. And then, I think for scale, we're always looking at things that it's not enough to do something in kind of a one-off anecdotal way, but like, are these things that can be brought to the supply chain in mass? And so again, I think Bangladesh is a really unique situation where you have a supply chain and kind of the infrastructure around a supply chain that's unique in some ways. And so thinking about what's going to be right for this region, what's going to work for the majority of the factories in this region, are there learnings that then we can also take to other regions as well? So I think it kind of hit all three categories for us, but Pauline would be interested in your take on that as well.
Yeah, Pauline, tell us from a staff perspective and really working on the program side of this, how this also met the evaluation criteria.
Yeah, I think in addition to what Mallory's already said, we, really are focusing on having a balanced portfolio as well as it relates to the decarbonization levers that we're addressing. So it was really important for us in this first round of funding, of grant project funding, to have a project that addresses, as you laid out in your intro, Louis, a key decarbonization lever, and renewable energy, as Mallory has shared, is a big part of the brand strategies. But as we've also already discussed, it's not just about meeting brand targets. In this case, it's actually really, increasing the resiliency of these factories in a country where, electricity is not available around the clock. So supplanting that supply with renewable electricity is really important. And I guess from the evaluation criteria, it was a very strong application. And we know already now from having the project kicked off that we're very confident in the impact figures that are going to be shared with us, and that this will definitely be a good learning kind of for other suppliers in this region, and that the work can be disseminated and scaled as the kind of market for solar PV installation increases as a result.
Happy to hear that, Pauline, and let me also thank you that we have been selected for the climate solutions portfolio. It was really great news a couple of days before I left for summer vacations. So that was really great, and we are really delighted to be selected here.
We are as well too, and I think what's exciting is the work that you're doing in other countries and other regions we may approach is also relevant. And I think as what our intention, and Pauline, maybe you can add to this, our intention really is to start by identifying, proven partners, proven technologies, proven solutions. And Mallory, you alluded to this too. Ideally, we're coming in and not trying to replicate or try to do too much in the early stage space that isn't yet proven, with some exception, which we can talk about. But for the most part, this really felt like an ideal project because we knew GIZ, we were familiar with your team, we knew the work that you'd done and the quality of the work, and we could really rely on the data that you were all presenting. Is there more to that, Pauline, around sort of, the goal and the intention to find partners like this and to help work with them towards scalability?
Yeah, I think the scalability in this really comes from seeing the project through to the end, to actually the support of the implementation. I think where these projects often stop is at the kind of assessment phase. Okay, solar PV is a good idea. And then that's where the kind of capacity building is really necessary to kind of work with the factory management to really get that project over the line. So we think through this project and doing it with 30 facilities, we'll be able to kind of increase that in-region knowledge and how to scale beyond those 30 facilities, obviously, and kind of implement solar PV in the facilities where it makes most sense for Bangladesh.
And then, as we had said, like ideally, our general theory of change is where AI comes in is really like last mile scalability. That's where we really want to say these are things that need to get to scale. What are the market drivers or the conditions that need to change, and look at that. But there are going to be, and we talked about one in a previous podcast, there are going to be some things that we find that are earlier, but no one else is working on it. It's a game changer. And so I just kind of wanted to leave some space for the fact that we do have flexibility and we are going to find things that are earlier. So let's talk about this, because now this is a proven solution that's scale phase in other regions, but now we're going to almost take it to like what we call the model phase. It's beyond pilot because you've already piloted this work elsewhere, but now we're going to start with 30, I think, is that right? With this grant size and partnering with you all and complementing existing resources.
Exactly. We will start with 30 facilities. We will now start to onboard the factories. This will then be a lot of capacity development for the responsible counterparts. Then we will create the first projects, and we believe that those projects will be kind of reference cases then in the specific industrial areas. We can estimate that one factory will have a CO2 reduction potential from 50 tons of CO2 per year up to 400.
And are you limiting it to a certain tier 1, tier 2, or are you making this available to different types of facility operations?
It's available for the entire value chain. I think that's another advantage because we can use the approach whenever there is electricity demand. And we are in the lucky situation that in the textile sector, the pattern of energy consumption fits quite well to the pattern of renewable energy production. So this is a big advantage. In other sectors, we do not have this advantage, and this makes the business cases in the textile sector even better.
I assume, as you mentioned, going beyond the 30 with future engagement, it's our intent at AII that we're keeping partners in the long run, and that maybe in years 1, 2, or 3, you need grant dollars to subsidize and help support this cost, but maybe beyond, you don't, but you're still part of our climate solutions portfolio and our intention to help support and grow your work beyond the 30 to more and more in Bangladesh, and then ultimately other regions that you may be looking to replicate this in. Does that resonate with you as well, Steffen, in terms of the longer term engagement?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, this approach is feasible for other countries, so we can apply it in other countries. We are doing so already. For us as a development agency, we are always dependent a bit from sponsors. Yeah, a lot of our activities are sponsored by the German government, and then we have other sponsors to extend our activities, and there we are always happy to do that and to use the existing approaches, services, and methods as we are doing it here. So it would be possible in Asia, in all the other typical textile countries, but also in Latin America, for example.
And then Mallory, from the position of sitting on the advisory council, as you all were reviewing criteria too, you were looking for things that weren't just a 1 or 2 year, whether the grant cycle was just a year or 3, you're really thinking of that 2030 and beyond, right? The scaling these globally.
Yeah, 100%. And I wanted to pick up on that a little bit because I think, Pauline's point around getting things that like actually are moving towards completion and like actual impact is really important as we looked at a variety of projects. And so, I think we have one council member who always talks about following the tons. And that's really, I think, what we wanted to do with this. So I think, the work is great that it starts with 30 and there's like a really clear and sort of calculated, endpoint of what we're trying to achieve with this initial funding. But certainly wouldn't stop there. And so, again, I think to your point, this is really sort of the modeling phase of what we would hope that goes to true scale.
So this is general question for the group, but Steffen, maybe you're the one to answer it. But how will facility recruitment occur? Do you already know who these 30 are you want to reach out to? Are they already engaged? Are you going to work with PBH on that? Are you going to work with AII and HIG data? I'm curious to know what's the pathway to getting 30 recruited facilities on board.
We just started with the facility recruitment. So I know that Pauline shared a few contacts already. I also know that our colleagues in Bangladesh started to reach out to our networks. So I think we are taking advantage of your network, of our network, and I think we will easily reach the 30 and have even more interest than 30.
If I'm a supplier in Bangladesh and I hear this podcast right now and I want to sign up, is there a criteria for this first 30? Are you looking at a certain volume or size, or do you want a mix of SMEs to large? Like what's ideal in this portfolio of 30?
I think a mix would be good to have at the end different examples. But between II and GIZ, we also said that a few minimum criteria should be met so that the size of the project should be at least 150 kilowatt peak, because otherwise the project development work is a bit too much work for a small project. So there are a few criteria, but I think it would be ideal to have then a variety of projects in order to show different examples.
Anything to add, Mallory or Pauline, on that?
I think, again, a great region for getting variety, right? Because I think you're going to have a wide variety of realities. And unless you're going to have people who are, kind of in their own compounds and have a unique situation operating there. You have people in like EPZ. You also have factories in a, building that may have multiple factories in that building. So I think there's going to be a pretty eclectic mix of folks who we could get a lot of learning from in terms of what's the suitability for this kind of project.
AII is working on a strategy to unlock blended capital towards this kind of work. So I'd be remiss in not bringing up some questions around finance here. The grant is not big enough to pay for all the solar installation. That's not the intent. It's the programmatic engagement, recruitment, organization, all of those non-ROI producing activities that we take off the project finance through grant making. We call that catalytic capital. And then what's left is that the facility is going to have to invest in this. Do you see that some will have funding in their corporate treasury and can take on those without financing it, and others may need to take on debt to do this? What is your vision, or how do you perceive the financing to happen?
I see the whole variety as you described it. Yeah. So there are facilities, they have the budget ready and they want to invest. Others are struggling and they do not want to take the investment on their balance sheet. And they ask then for that funding, or they even ask sometimes for third-party owner investment models. That would mean that another company invests on their roof and supplies then with renewable electricity, and they pay for the electricity. So all this is possible, all this is available already in the market, and I believe we will see the whole variety.
And that really aligns with the conversations we're having with banks, development banks, and other financial institutions now around really trying to provide access to capital and sustainable finance, lower interest rate finance. But I love, the model of leasing or renting the energy, from another buyer, because it also doesn't put the cost of that equipment on the books of the facility. And so many ways in which we can look at this and build packaging to complement this work. So I'm sure we'll have some conversations with you all about how to best complement this with the right available finance as well too. Many other questions in my mind, but let me just turn it back to you guys to be able to pose some questions with each other, or to share with the listeners, what you'd like to know about this particular project, the Climate Solutions portfolio, that maybe we haven't said today. And I'll start with Mallory.
Yeah, I think, I'm again interested in all of the learnings that we're going to get, I think, from bringing what's a really needed project into a critical production site. I think as we think about renewable energy, at least from my experience, I think that infrastructure and kind of investment is one piece of it, but I think there's a lot of policy and regulatory engagement that needs to come out of this too. It's really interested in how we start to take the learnings from this work and apply it there, right? So how should we be engaging with regulators in that market to make this really a more attractive opportunity for suppliers to really move the needle on that? Or how do we start to engage on grid reliability and other, areas that we think there's opportunity in the region. So just excited around not just what this project does in terms of delivering impact, but also what it does in terms of informing long-term change that we need to see.
I will come back to you, Mallory, to talk a little bit more about the policy piece, not today on this podcast, but I think there's some real opportunities, and a couple of us from the AII community of practice are going to be at COP in the coming months in Dubai, where there will be country representatives from a lot of these countries. And I think it makes sense for us to take advantage of opportunities to really start these dialogues with delegates from countries that are focusing on clean energy and just energy transitions, and make the apparel sector in their radar, which hopefully for a country like Bangladesh, where textiles are such a large percentage of the GDP, that this sector is on their radar. But I think that's part of the work that we want to do at AII too, is to elevate this particular industry sector to some of those larger country conversations around just energy transitions and available energy transitions. Pauline, anything on your side to add that you want to share with the audience, or also just questions for this group?
Yeah, I think just to build on what Mallory said, I think it's a really good example of where, doing something that has a decarbonization component also very much has a kind of business kind of bottom line, but also resiliency benefit. And I think we're going to see more projects like that in the future that are not just about saving money and carbon, but really thinking about the kind of overall resiliency of a business as we enter, we continue in this kind of energy crisis and eventually reduced resource availability as well. So I think the learnings that we have from this will be really interesting kind of case studies to think of how we design projects that are not just looking at carbon, but really taking the full picture of what this means for a business.
Given that this Fashion Climate Fund is pooled through a lot of philanthropy dollars and some brand corporate treasury dollars, but with the philanthropy dollars, we really have a responsibility as a nonprofit to share everything we're doing and to make it available in a way that can be replicated, that there's learnings. And so this project, I'm excited to read the case study of the 30 facilities as it comes out, because it's a great way for us to ensure that we're helping others learn from and replicate, even if it's another industry sector that's working on this, just like we need those case studies and reports to inform us, what best technologies and programs are out there. Steffen, I know you don't just work in textile apparel too, and also oftentimes these facilities are clustered in industrial parks that may have other product categories being produced. Is there work that you all are envisioning or thinking about beyond just the textile apparel sector?
Actually, 2/3 of the projects we are developing are not in the textile sector, farms or hotels or supermarkets. So the whole variety of industrial and commercial clients we are working with. And if you allow me, I would like to add another argument to what Pauline said and connect it a bit with the regulatory recommendations, because to increase the resilience of the factories we are working with by the renewable energy project, I think that's a very important point, because they get independent, or more independent at least, from the energy markets. And I think that's an argument we should bring into the exchanges you have with policymakers and opt there for more possibilities for on-site renewable energy productions, because politics are very often very reluctant to allow a lot of renewable production on-site. So if we could together their campaign for more possibilities, I think that would be great. And nonetheless, today we should use the possibilities we have, because all projects we develop will be possible within the current and existing regulatory framework in Bangladesh.
Thank you. Well, your insights on that are really valuable, and I appreciate your views.
I just wanted to add on to that, because I think you could almost even maybe take it one level higher in terms of the resiliency conversation. And it's such an important point, Pauline, because I think, yes, we can talk about manufacturers themselves, resiliency in the supply chain as they move to more renewable energy. But I think you also have to talk about Bangladesh itself as a production country, right? Like, Dhaka is at sea level. And when you think about Bangladesh, almost the entire population is divided between Chittagong and Dhaka. Like, there's a real need, as we think about even from our kind of risk scenarios that we've done around climate internally, like it's high on the list. So I think there's, it's bigger than just kind of the resiliency of the manufacturing facilities themselves, but I think of the country itself and thinking through what kind of happens if we don't alter course for this country.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think, when I mentioned that, some of us are going to COP, the continued conversations that are happening at COP really are leaning into resiliency and what does climate resiliency and the future look like in terms of mitigating a lot of the risks that are coming down the pipeline, and really thinking community centric. So often we get into these industry sectors and we're just thinking B2B and we're thinking facilities and improvements in factory owners, but underneath that is the livelihood and the work of these individuals that live in these communities. And so I think you're absolutely right, because at the end of the day, the beneficiaries of all this work are really individuals who collectively are making up a huge part of the labor force, but they're citizens of these countries that are in such peril. Particularly Bangladesh is a great one, as sea levels rise, as temperatures change, as climate and weather patterns change. And we're already seeing that in Bangladesh. This year has been rough. And so this is a really great way to remind ourselves of the work that we're ultimately doing is also around resilient communities. Let's take it out with a quick call to action for the listeners, based on this work and just based on the work in general that we're all doing to decarbonize the supply chain and again, communities. So with that, I'll ask each one of us to kind of give their own particular call to action to the listeners. And I'll start with Steffen.
Yeah, my first call for action would be that we work together on the 30 factories. But my next call for action would be that we not only talk about the electricity energy supply, but also about the heat energy supply, because there is even more CO2 saving potentials. And we know that the boilers, very often fired with coal, are very ineffective. And I think there are great possibilities then to decarbonize not only the electricity supply, but also the industrial heat steam supply.
We estimated 52% of the carbon emissions are coming from tier 2, which is predominantly coming from those boilers that are aerated by coal, natural gas, other things. Pauline, call to action.
To build off of Steffen, we have identified that, and our kind of second round of funding this year is going towards developing roadmaps, specifically a roadmap to deal with how the sector approaches low carbon thermal energy and what kind of the best way forward is with that. So my call to action is just for everyone to wait patiently as we develop this roadmap. And I think in the summer of next year, we will have it, and that will then open up the kind of possibility to do projects exactly like this GIZ one, but focusing on heat. So that would be my call to action. But we do have to wait a little bit before we get there.
Thank you for doing the preliminary research that it takes to have that solid roadmap in place. Great. And Mallory, call to action.
My call to action it's always the same, so I'm going to be repetitive, but it's to join us. If you're a brand, it would be great to have you in the fund. I think we're all accountable for kind of creating this enabling environment that allows us to do the work. If you have a solution, we want to see it. Put it in the portfolio. If you have funding, instead of an application, if you're a supplier, use the portfolio. So, I would ask everyone to join us.
And my call to action builds off all three of you, which is we need more partners outside of our echo chamber of the fashion, textile, apparel sector to really help contribute to this work, because we know that the money, the solutions, the partnerships, the regional approach is happening in other areas. And we feel that the textile apparel sector is really well organized now, and AII has been playing a role in getting this organized in a very science-based, data-driven approach. But share this podcast with others. Send it to climate funders, climate investors, or portfolios of technologies and solution providers and ventures that may be of interest. So building on what Mallory said, like, please get the word out and help us create more reach for this work, because we need everyone and every mind on the planet that is focusing on these solutions to join us. All right. Well, with that, I thank the three of you for joining me today. And I'm really excited about this project with GIZ. And I can't wait to follow the updates. And maybe, Steffen, we get you back here 12 months down the road or 18 months and we hear an update, because I think that'd be a great way to keep abreast of what's the development and what's happening in the learnings.
Definitely would be happy to come back and to share the learnings and the results.
All right. Well, thank you all. And thank you to all the listeners that have participated today. And as Mallory said, join us.